It's actually 1,500 kilometres.
So an aggregate premium of about 5 lakhs per annum to save for long-term future needs, normally by people in their late 40s and 50s, is arguably not the super rich. I would just like to consider that. Request you to review the limit and raise it to 10 lakhs. A few additional points that I'd like to place, ma'am, that these non-ULIP products are the only products in the financial market that offer long-term guaranteed returns with no call option, and they enable security for planning for people who want some guaranteed returns in their non-earning age. The risk protection is that of financial volatility risk, in addition to mortality and longevity, which comes as a package in that policy. These products also, ma'am, provide for funds for infrastructure development. Just for example, like the life insurance industry has invested 2.6 lakh crores in government securities through these non-unit linked policies in FY22. That's one point, ma'am. The second point is, for the super rich that will continue to be taxed, we request you to please consider that the corpus is received typically about 10 to 40 years, in a period of 10 to 40 years, that's the duration of the policy period in most of our policies. Taxing that difference in the year of receipt under income from other sources would actually result in negative returns given inflation and depreciation. So we request that for those people we tax it under capital gains with indexation benefits and not under income from other sources. Ma'am, we would also like to reinforce the place and role of life insurance in the economy. I would really request that you give us, the life insurance CEO, some time to meet you and work with you to realize your vision for the industry. Thank you very much, ma'am. I look forward to your favorable consideration of our requests. Thank you.
Anything on Mr. Bharatram about 15% in perpetuity, or is there a sunset clause?
I can see where you're coming from, but after all, every decision of a government starts somewhere. And, well, if I extended it for 2 years prior to where I've given, the one prior to that is going to feel left out. So I have to draw a line somewhere.
Madam, my issue was perpetuity.
No, I understand that. It is only when it is running for perpetuity you feel doubly deceived because you didn't get a clue earlier.
Yeah, but
and I don't know whether it will be for perpetuity or not. I can't indicate anything now.
As of now, the policy says for perpetuity.
That's okay. But which means you've already given me the clue that since we've said it's perpetuity, the line drawing should be different.
Okay, Janmajay Sinha, Nadir Godrej and Neil Raheja.
Madam, I'm going to make two recommendations. Sadly, on the first one, you will be able to do nothing, but on the second one, you can. The first, we would like you to be made permanent Finance Minister of India, or at least for the next 5 years. But I know that it would be... But given that recommendation you can't handle, I'll give you another recommendation which falls under your ambit. This budget has very correctly asked the financial regulators to review their policies and also engage with the public. They should be given a timeline on which they are going to do this, because the RBI, at least on financial regulation, has a timeless kind of a concept. So they need to be able to tell us how many regulations they will be reviewing and which ones they are reviewing at a moment of time, so that we can engage with them. Mr. Jaitley had once told me that there are only two institutions in India which don't answer to Parliament and possibly only to God, which is the Supreme Court and RBI. And then he added to me that on RBI he is not too sure. So we just want you to just make it sure that they tell us which policies they are reviewing so that we can give them input. Thank you.
You need to. No, you need to press. 1 minute. 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 1 minute.
Thank you for an excellent budget. In the oleochemicals industry, there's an issue of inverted customs duties. And in the budget, there was a special provision made reducing the duty on crude glycerine from 7.5% to 2.5%, but only if it's used for the manufacture of epichlorohydrin. We would appreciate it if it was also, this lower duty was also extended if crude glycerine was used to manufacture refined glycerine. This will help India to be Atmanirbhar in refined glycerine. And we also block the various steps taken to enhance credit delivery and efficiency to the MSMEs in India. That said, don't you think there's a lot more to be done for this very important pillar of our economy to fulfill their potential? Anything we as responsible contributors to the nation can do in this regard, all NBFCs, including Godrej Capital, would be very happy to help in this mission.
Neil?
Ma'am, I must congratulate you on a very growth-oriented budget with a lot of increase in Capex and at the same time maintaining a fiscal deficit in the last full budget before election. So I must compliment you on that. One of the suggestions we want to take and mention is you've been instrumental in creating the REIT legislation. In the last 6 years, every budget of yours has brought in and made it a new product in line with global regulation. And we've seen this industry just taking off. It's critical for the government's national monetization program. It's also helping in real estate recycling of capital. There has been one change brought in this budget with reference to return of capital. And what this has done is essentially when capital is returned to unit holders, it's been brought into a tax of other income under other sources, which means the capital rate for international investors is 42%, individual high net worth at the highest marginal rate. I believe that may or may not have been the intention. I think there is no dispute that it should not get away from tax, and it was not getting away from tax. Essentially, the suggestion was if it could be used like any other capital receipt to reduce the cost of shares and thereafter tax it at the capital gains tax rate. Because if this stays as other income, my fear is this product will not be able to take off, and actually a lot of the REITs will have to start, and InvITs will have to start shutting down. So you could just consider that change.
Swayam Prakash Banal.
Madam, thank you very much here. So,
Right at the back.
so I'm very much thankful that a lot of provision been made for MSME startups and a lot of thrust as usual behind the sector. The thing is that post-COVID we had government has brought a very good scheme for strengthening the MSMEs and startups with CGTMSE, and many organizations, many companies, small organizations got benefit out of it. But in the past, there are a few things that have come up that the higher interest rate right now is really affecting them. Few of those when we interacted closely, we have found out. And the other thing is that the CGTMSE fee, which is still 2%, the total, I think. So if that can be looked at, and it will really, because post-COVID, whatever did, and these organizations are trying to stand up now. Thank you.
Sachin Jain, and after that Ashok Sehgal and Sunil Mehta.
Ma'am, my own congratulations also in addition for a wonderful budget. One issue, ma'am, textile industry is a huge job creator, and the China plus one policy moving across the world, massive job creation can happen in India, ma'am. And cotton has a 10% custom duty, which increases drastically the cost of raw material in India. So this was done about a couple of years ago, and the request from the industry was to bring it back to zero as it was earlier. So if that could be re-examined, bringing down the custom duty on cotton. Thank you.
Ashok Sehgal.
Good afternoon, Madam. Thank you very much for all the consideration you have shown for MSMEs in this budget as you have in the last two budgets. There's one specific point I want to raise, and I think you'll be happy it's a question rather than just a suggestion, that in this budget you have made a provision that if MSMEs were affected by the COVID and their bid bonds or the performance bond were forfeited, 95% of that would be returned. Now, it's not very clear when did the COVID period end, because to some dates it ended in India, continued in China, was affected by the Ukraine war, which affected the supply chains, bringing in the raw materials for industry to manufacture. So the request is that has this specific date been announced when this COVID period is declared to have ended, or if not, is it possible that the concluding date could be December 22, so that the supply chains internationally have also stabilized by that time? So a specific question if you could answer.
No, I think the moratorium period was the one which was kept in mind. It is that period that we are talking about. It had a date, but this one probably starts a bit later than that date for some reason. But it is a moratorium period, during which time everything came to a standstill, and you couldn't, the MSME couldn't service as per the contract, and therefore we have now said during that period, because you couldn't fulfill, we treat it as, for conditions or reasons beyond their control, and therefore we said we'll return 95% of
the request is that since for ECLGS the expiry period is, for example, March 23, therefore could that be taken as a cut-off in this case?
Well, as of now, no.
Sunil?
I don't know, it's on. Yeah. You know, every year at the end of the budget, the media is scrambling, asking people questions, and their normal question is, what was missing, what was wrong? So it was actually hard this time to find what was wrong. So, big thank you.
But did they also come this time?
To say a great job?
No. Did they come this time around as well, asking the same question?
Yes, they did.
They did?
They did.
Oh.
So that, no. Well, you know how the media operates. Yeah, so it was interesting. It was hard to actually find things to say because it was such a diverse set of issues that got covered in a speech shorter than you normally give, by the way.
The shortest, probably.
It was the shortest.
My
exactly. Yes. And two questions and a suggestion. One is the big increase seems to come, the capital formation seems to come from two things only: the green bonds and the loans to states. Is that because you think there's a lack of ability to absorb or implement projects by the line ministries, that this allocation is mostly here? And
no,
also,
are you suggesting that the increase in the allocation is essentially because of these two? The green
large
bonds
portion of it is in these two. And also, if you look at last year, the three areas which missed the target for spend was home building, road building, I'm trying to remember, there was a third one. Three of them actually missed the target to spend.
But the target overall, that which we had to achieve, we are close to achieving it. Very close to achieving it. So the indication is we have actually given a number and kept very close to it in terms of achieving it. Well, as regards the 1 lakh which was announced last year for the states, you are aware we gave something like 80% of it without conditions attached.
Yes.
And the rest 20 went with conditions. The 80 didn't have a problem, although of course I'm yet to get the final figures. The problems were largely in the 20 because they went with conditions. And many of the states were yet not in a position ready to take those conditions on board. And this year, even for a minute, if I want to go by your inference as to this is why probably it's gone up, it wouldn't add up then. The total amount that we have put forward is much bigger than what you have these two adding up to. So it's a bigger increase.
Right.
Yes, we'll have to push on some other grounds, such as the states and reforms parallelly.
Which is a wonderful thing. You incentivize them to for good behavior. I think that's the right thing to do. So just one offer, the program that you announced, one product, one district, wonderful program. I think I mentioned last year as well. CI had worked on this since the last 20 years. More than happy to get engaged, involved, if you would like CI to be involved in the implementation part of this. It's a lot to do with details on the ground and how it works. There are countries like Thailand and Japan who've done it quite successfully. In fact, the term was actually picked from their OTOP and OWOP, which they use. And the suggestion is, would you consider, or do you think it's possible to create what was done for GST implementation, a body including the states and the center for some of the big implementations, the reform, land, education, labor, power reforms. These are all areas which still need some work to be done, and the center can only do so much because of our regulation. Would you consider something, or is it even a possibility to look at a body which works together between the states and the center?
Yes, of course, why not? Because ultimately the objective is that we achieve that milestone, because the rate at which we need to grow, we may not be able to reach the rate unless many of these things in the ground also simultaneously kick in. And any lethargy anywhere or any want of support anywhere is just going to hit at the larger goal as well. So yes, why not? You're welcome to give me ideas, and we can also see how the various departments or the states can also, work together and speed up on those things, because those are areas in which hand-holding has not reached the last person, the producer or the service provider. So it is necessary we reach out faster. That's right. Let's see how we can design it.
Okay, Salil Singhal, Vipin Sondi, Ajit Gulabchand and Vinayak Chatterjee.
Ma'am, my question is very specific. There is a mention in the finance bill that certain HSN codes will be changed and they will be given preferential treatment. The rates will be decided by the 1st of May, but they will be effective from the 2nd of February. And the same code number, the same products, and particularly I refer to the agrochemical industry, they already figure in HSN 38, where the duty indication is at 10%, but in this finance bill, there is an indication of 7.5%, with what will be the preferential rate is left blank. We are trying to understand exactly what is this idea of some announcement on the 1st of May to be applicable effective 2nd of Feb.
I may not be able to elaborate on it, but one thing I can clearly say is it is done to align oneself with the rest of the HSN following areas, geographical jurisdictions. One, and second, our timing of the budget and the finance bill is, after all, March. So I couldn't have the budget be presented for the HSN code earlier. And I wouldn't have done it even last year because they have a lot of work to be done, and that was completed just in time. So there are no other specific reasons for backing back and forth on the dates. But beyond this, I'm not sure I'll be able to elaborate.
But it's indicating a custom duty rate at 7.5, whereas the same identical product in HSN 38 says the duty is 10%, which is what it is. We have been paying that for now years.
I'll have something drafted up and send it to you so that you are answered comprehensively.
And I'm surprised that you're reducing the duty.
Why are you surprised? You should be happy.
I know, because there has been a lot of pressure coming to us from the government that we intend to raise customs duty.
So we give you pleasant surprises.
Thank you. I wish this could be done all the time.
Thank you. Vipin? Ma'am, just wanted to add my congratulations as well. This is really a comment, not so much a question, but a lot of work to be done both by industry and by government. This is on R&D and innovation. And I think a lot has been done in this budget. The President stated two specially. But when you look at the opening of ICMR labs for research, public and private, I think that's a big statement made, where government laboratories will be opened and facilities can be used. The other is the 3 centers of excellence and the 100 labs in educational institutions, where then academia and industry can collaborate together in newer age technologies. I think that is excellent. And the underlying premise that we read is that during Amrit Kal, innovation will be a key pillar for the country to continue to be competitive. The suggestion will be that, ma'am, as a country, we just spend 0.7% on R&D totally. And the developed countries spend 2 to 2.5%. So if we are going to increase that over up to 2030 on a much higher base, both industry and government will have to put in a lot of might together. And we'll do some proposals and come back to the government, but we're working with the PSA's office and DST's office as well. But these steps are good in bringing academia, industry, startups and research laboratories together in some kind of research laboratory, a research quadrilateral. And if that can be encouraged further, that will help a lot. Mr. Gulabji.
You have introduced the TDS on interest of debentures. The debentures which are publicly listed are listed because, most substantially because of banks. And the payment of the interest happens at the termination of the period of the debenture. But now introduce TDS would mean that the borrower has to pay a TDS every year on this, and therefore puts in a huge cash flow burden on the borrower. Second is that the bank may sell that debenture. So there would be a mismatch between who got the TDS and who will get the set-off. This was done in the past, but it was rolled back because of this very reason. So we'd like you to consider rolling this back. It is a pain. Second is a more general one, very important. As our economy grows, as the complexity of it grows, so have the regulations and regulators, several regulators. With so many regulations coming in regularly, because that's what the regulator does, we are making the working business a bit complex. It might come in the way of ease of doing business when they become complex. So maybe you want to think about it, that if there is one regulation created by any regulator, he must give up at least 2 that he has. This has worked well in America. They finally went to 8 for one new regulation. But we need not go that far. But the fact is, some kind of a check on the regulation that he looks at himself and says, is this too much?
No, I quite agree with that. Yeah. But I don't know whether I can bargain for the ratio. We'll see what we can do about it.
Government can easily begin in a small way and then it becomes...
I quite agree.
Vinay.